Self-quarantining.
The quarantine order.
Quarantined in their...
Held in quarantine.
Quarantine.
The quarantine in place.
Quarantine for the required 14 days.
Hey, what's up, people? Long time no speak, but I am your friendly neighborhood Negro, Jay Carrington, aka JC, and I'm gonna welcome you back to another episode of Quarantine Talks. And this is a super duper special episode of Quarantine Talks because me and my buddy Tim, one of my best friends in the world, sit down to talk Accentism. That is discrimination based off of your accent in the United Kingdom, specifically in London. Now, this conversation was actually held in September of 2019. All right, so this conversation happened quite some time ago, but with all the controversy surrounding Queen Lizzie and the royal family, I felt like this was a more than perfect time to dive back into such a deep, interesting spiderweb of a topic. All right, so a little background on my boy Tim. He is an Australian born and bred gentleman who moved to London at the age of 23 for university and just hadn't went back. And so in this conversation, we're gonna discuss the literal dozens of accents inside of London, the history of those accents, how they came to be, and how, like I said earlier, the way that you sound affects everything from the job that you get, the people that you date, the places that you can go. I mean, literally in the city of London, the way that you sound dictates what your life is gonna be like. That is wild. So we talk about the accents in London on a micro, and then we talk about the accents in the UK on the macro as a whole, right? This is gonna be the accent differentiation between Britain, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. And then we even go a little bit further and we talk about the systematic discrimination that the British actually did to the Irish, right? Because there was a time in British history where there were signs on the doors that said, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. All right, so this history goes deep. It actually explains why Irish Twitter was at football games talking about that song is a bop. I said it, fight me. And then also, interestingly enough, we talk about how Londoners often view Australians as like these backwards country hicks.
Mate, all I had was me jocks on. I was chasing him up the street and I'm just like, mate.
It's kind of similar to how a lot of Northerners view Southerners when they speak. And it's kind of crazy because my buddy Tim, he's been in the UK for so long, he admits that he even looks at them this way too, right?
Mate.
And then finally, we talk about this interesting thing called third culture, right? Third culture is when the child or children of immigrants have 3 points of reference for their lives. This is going to be the culture in which they live. This is going to be the culture that happens in their house. And this is going to be finally the culture from the country of origin of the parents, right? It's 3 cultures all rolled into one. Y'all, the most fascinating thing about this conversation is, as an American, we all understand how ethnicity or race plays a part in our society, right? But in London, you can be the bliggity blackest of person.
Hey, auntie.
And all because of the way that you speak. You would even be hired over or promoted over someone who is white or white passing or white presenting for jobs, economic support, all of the things. In London, it's not just about how you look. It is 50-50 about the way that you sound. So this is a fascinating concept for me. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a fascinating concept for the rest of everybody that listens to this that is not either British or of those isles listed earlier. And I think I speak for all Americans when I say, especially the black ones, nigga, what? If y'all like smart shit, we got it in spades today. All right, let's go.
So we're going to get to this point before I forget. Okay, so like I said, African-American vernacular English has been recognized in America by American like linguistic scholars or whatever as an official dialect because it's different. We speak so differently using the words that we have, right? So case in point, there's a song, and I was going to ask you if you could understand this. And the song, this is the girl named, the rapper's name is Megan Thee Stallion. Have you heard of her?
No.
She's beautiful. You would probably like her. So she says, yo mama, don't bring your dad to the mall because when he be in there, she know he be choosing. Do you understand that? Not the choosing part, but like the when he be in there, she know he be choosing. Does that make any sense to
when
me?
he is in,
Yes.
He will be choosing.
Right. Oh, so you understand it?
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, would somebody not understand it?
Yeah, I think people from from generations older than me wouldn't get it, but I get it, because it's sort of like a reversal of grammar and you're missing words, and
right?
Stuff, but it makes sense.
You know he'd be choosing, right? So I was wondering that, but you also kind of have a disadvantage because you hang around ethnic people. But what about you're at an advantage that most people don't have. And then because there had been court cases, right? Stenographers couldn't understand what was being said, so they typed the wrong thing. And they gave an example, like,
and then when they appeal it years later, they're trying to gauge the technicality of the language.
And it was something crazy. It was something like a crazy statistic, like 70% of all transcribed court messages or court whatever, it's like 70 or 60% had errors in interpreting what was spoken.
That's interesting.
And they gave an example.
It's really interesting.
And it was like the officer asked the guy, or somebody in the court had asked the guy a question, and he said, "Nah, he don't be around there." Mm-hmm. And the person typed it as, "He is around there."
Yeah,
he is frequently there.
Yeah,
and that was like, it couldn't be further from what that
literal opposite.
And my whole thing was like, how good at English do you have to be to understand he don't be? I understand it's a double negative.
Yeah.
And, you know, grammatically speaking, that a double negative means a positive. But he don't be, like, it's situational combined with, like, how do you not get that?
Well, the stenographer is probably someone from the
suburban
50s,
white
suburban white chick with a back dead straight.
I think that means...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a bastard of a job.
Yeah.
And there's probably techniques that they're doing to, like, and she probably heard he be here.
Right.
She's probably not listening in, registering every word, just typing. Maybe that's what, because they do type in shorthand. And so she might have missed the key bit, which
don't is the key word.
Don't being the key word, which could have been real problematic for that defendant or plaintiff or whoever years down the line.
Like that. Okay, so if you guys wondering who I'm talking to, this is my buddy Tim. I've known this guy for like 3 years now. I met him in Paris at a hostel. We hung out, and I think he ended up banging his roommate. With some chick, some redheaded girl. Wasn't there some redheaded girl? Some redheaded older lady?
In Paris? I don't remember. Yeah.
He had fun in Paris, guys.
Yeah, Russian lady. Married lady.
Oh, God. I wanted to do video, but he doesn't like video.
He's discreet.
He's discreet. Sounds like a Grindr profile. Anyway.
What's a Grindr profile?
Oh boy. So yeah, I'm Jake Harrington, aka JC. This is going to be a special edition podcast recording something or other. Podcast recording.
Yeah.
For what's the name? For the OBT network. I decided to take a working vacation, and I hadn't been to London in like 2 years, and certain people were wondering when the fuck I was coming back. So I was like, hey, I'm back. I'm here. And so now we're gonna talk over some topics, because we had a very interesting conversation that I didn't know existed. Apparently the UK has a really big thing about accents. Like your accent denotes your class, and your class denotes your place in society. Because even though London specifically is a very progressive city, I mean, you guys still have a king and a queen and a royal family that you pay taxes to and are involved in parliament. Like I saw something crazy, like the queen gets to decide a vote or something. I'm like, why? Why does this bitch get to decide anything? Like, what is this about? So yeah, we're gonna talk over that topic. All right. So first thing I wrote this down. I was prepared. Let's see.
Yeah, very good.
I had a night last night. Where is it? So first things first. Let's talk about the who, the what, and the where. So who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
I am a mid to late 30s gentleman. Early to mid to late 30s gentleman from Australia originally, but I spent the vast majority of my adult life in Britain.
Okay.
In London.
When did you come here?
I came here in 2005 or 6 when I was 23.
Some of this is gonna go on camera. You just got to deal with it.
And I came here for fun as a young kid, essentially. Running away from my small town, small city,
which
is Perth, Australia.
So my guy's an Aussie and an Englishman.
Yes, in fact, I'm half Welsh.
Half Welsh.
Welsh.
This will be important later because Welsh people have a very distinctive accent.
They do very much so.
Yeah. Northern Isle people have a distinctive accent.
Yeah, very, very distinctive accent. Looked down upon in England.
In England.
Yeah. And I've been here essentially ever since, so about 14, 15 years or so.
Okay. And then, so what do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah, what do you do for work? Oh, yeah.
For work?
That's a very American question.
No, it's fine. Good, you know.
Let's talk about
I work as a consultant mainly.
Okay.
But in an interesting field. I conceptualize, develop, implement, operate, and expand hospitality businesses. So food and beverage, restaurants, bars, cafes, nightclubs, members clubs, and hotels most recently, where I've been working with a very interesting hotel company, very similar to the one we're in here, Citizen M, boutique hotel.
Just not to cut you off. So guys, for context, he actually let me see his resume. And so I've been coming to London for a while now. This will be my 5th or 6th time here. And so maybe 4th or 5th. I don't know, between 4 and 6. How about that? And so this guy is usually like a tour guide for me. And so he's taken me to quite a few places. And with the exception of a place called Bali Ballerson, I didn't know that he had worked with these people. So I see his resume and I was like, yo, you've done like over half of Shoreditch and everywhere else that you ever taken me around this fucking city. So he's kind of good at his job. So yeah, that's just, you can go ahead. Just want to big you up.
Thank you for praise. Yeah. Look, I'm lucky. I love my job. It's a very unique job. It's a job that doesn't exist. In fact, I think it does exist actually, but I didn't know it existed. But I materialized it for myself because I didn't know where I was going. I was pursuing lots of different things, and long story short, my housemate said, "Why don't you pursue hospitality? You sound much more passionate about that than anything." And I'd never considered it a real job. I just considered being a barman as like a job to get me through school and kick around and have fun and so on. But then when I pursued it from a different perspective, from a professional perspective, lots of interesting things opened up, and then I developed a bunch of really cool cocktail bars and nightclubs, and then one contract led on to another, and on and on and on. And it's sort of been going for about 10 years now.
Oh wow, since you were... that's dope.
Yeah.
Because you gave me hope, friend.
Yeah.
You started yours.
I started late.
Yeah, you started yours exactly around the same time
Yeah.
I'm starting to.
Yeah, I went to I didn't go to university until 27. Maybe even 28. And I finished when I was 30, 31. So I definitely was behind a lot of people. Definitely didn't get access to lots of things, and I was a bit insecure about it. Access to work experience. But I felt like I had a brain, and I felt like I felt like I needed a degree to prove it.
Okay.
Because at the time, I think even sort of 10 years ago, it was still more important.
You kind of need
now. I think it's
paper.
It's
now
different.
It's just kind of like, okay, well, what the fuck can you do?
Yeah.
Because like most of the billionaires that we know now, the people that have started most of the things that we use don't have college degrees or dropped out of college.
No, that's right. And the work that I do now is much more about the runs on the board. Is what have you done, like the portfolio. show someone a portfolio and it's much more relevant and useful than showing them a CV necessarily, or the degree that I got, which I learned nothing at. But all it did for me was give me the confidence to approach people and think that I would have the credibility to do certain jobs.
And luckily for you, you live here where college is moderately priced or free, and you don't have to worry about the crushing debt that companies.
No. So I did it, but I did it in Australia, but we have a system with the government. They pay for it and they don't. It's not silly like it is in the US.
Fuck that. Goddamn.
Yeah.
The amount of things you can do when you can graduate school without having to worry about paying your debt back.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It should be free. It's a joke. It's outrageous. They're businesses. Universities are businesses.
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah.
It's neither here nor there. So, okay, now.
Is that going off?
Yes.
Yes.
You started to fidget too. Like I saw you. You were like, oh. I'll turn it up. All right. So,
yeah.
Oh man. So, for all the things that I love about London and all that good stuff in the UK, a little bit of a backdrop for people that don't know. So the United Kingdom is Britain, Ireland, and Scotland. Even more history.
And Wales.
And Wales. So wait, I thought Wales was like a part of the Northern Island of Britain.
No.
It's separate.
Northern Ireland is part of the UK.
Oh. Northern Ireland. I'm talking about, I thought the Wales was a part of Britain. I thought it was just a section.
But not included in the United Kingdom.
But I thought
the UK.
I thought Wales was a city inside of Britain.
No, Wales is a country. It's a country.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
Even more of a history lesson. There you go, guys. So Britain, Wales, Scotland,
England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland.
Yeah, there you go. If you don't know, you can do your research on how much the English have kind of like fucked over the world, including their neighbors. Scottish, Irish, Welsh. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So lots of prisoning and all that good stuff, and throwing people in jail and shipping them off, and that's how we got America and Australia.
Yep.
Both were originally penal colonies. Both were originally designed to be penal colonies until they forcefully grabbed their independence away from mother country. Because all mother country did was lock up the Scottish, the Welsh, and the Irish people for, I don't know,
trumped up charges probably most of the time. People getting sent to Australia for stealing bread. Just because they were starving.
Yeah. If you want proper context, think about the way that America treats black people. It's pretty much the way that England treated everybody else.
Yeah.
So moving forward, all of these places have very distinct accents. So British people sound one way, Scottish people sound one way, Welsh people sound one way, Irish people sound one way. Most people are familiar with Irish and Scottish. Welsh is like Scottish British, kind of. I can hear it and I can kind of tell you, but you would have to be used to hearing people from the UK region speak in the different dialects. You kind of have to be familiar with it. Like I can kind of point it out and be like, oh, you're Irish, oh, you're Scottish.
Yeah.
Are you from the North? Are you from Birmingham? Are you from it? Like I can kind of, but I've been here and I've been around enough British people to know.
Yeah.
Imbibed enough British media, so on and so forth, to kind of pick out the differences. And this is where I'll let him take it away. So, apparently your accent denotes class.
Right.
Because classism, like we said earlier, is a thing here. It's a big thing. It's still a thing.
Classism, I don't know if it was ever an outline system or whatever, but it's certainly cultural norms that the country or the kingdom has operated within. Mm-hmm. So within all those countries you just mentioned, there's also multiple accents within those regions too. So, and we'll get to that further, but within Wales, there's several different accents, and in Scotland, you've got Glasgow versus Edinburgh, and all sorts of regional accents. Northern Ireland versus Ireland, Dublin versus Belfast, completely different accent and very, very distinct, easy to hear the difference. And then when you get into England, which is, a larger geographical region than all of these places, is dozens and dozens and dozens of languages, not necessarily, of accents, not necessarily dialects. I think a lot of the dialect has died out. There's obviously a lot of regional slang, but I don't think you'd call it dialect like you would call it in Italy, where they literally don't understand each other from different towns and cities. The Liverpool accent is very distinctly different from the Manchester accent, and they're an hour away from each other as cities. And then you move to Newcastle, an extremely distinct accent, and Leeds and Birmingham. And then you come down to London, to say nothing of Cornwall and all these sort of places. They're all completely different. And you could argue as different as, certainly a Scottish accent, I have trouble understanding it. Just as much trouble potentially as I'd have with a really strong Indian accent who's speaking English, and the English being their first language, or Singapore.
Also putting this into context, guys, for most of the American listeners, like, think of it like New York's accent versus Georgia's accent versus Californian accent versus a Midwestern accent. It's the same difference, it's like different geographical regions have different ways of speaking, different vernacular, different slang, and different impositions on those. Like even here, I can listen to someone from South London would speak differently from someone from West London.
So I'm getting to that. So as we get our way down from all those places, we end up in London. And within London,
culturally speaking, it's like...
Yeah, so London is a bubble within itself, and it probably has been since the Roman times. But the distinction of accents just within London, and I'm not sure how many miles London is across. I think it's 50 miles or something, or 30 miles. It's not a big area, but there's many accents before the immigration started happening. So now we've got literally every country in the world is represented here, and every dialect from every country is represented right here.
I saw something that said literally 50% of the city is white and 50% is everything else.
Yeah. Like, and I believe it may be white, but it's not necessarily
British.
No,
because you have Eastern Europeans, Western Europeans, Southern Europeans.
So I believe that white British people in London are a minority. Or certainly a very small majority.
Which I feel also plays a part in this whole accentism and classism thing.
Yeah. So it's very clear in many, oftentimes, someone from, for example, West London, their accent versus someone from East London versus someone from Southeast London. And that's fine. It's regional, it's geographical. But then you have the different classes of people within those neighborhoods. So we discussed briefly the other day that you could be poor and from West London. Just because you're from West London doesn't mean you have a certain accent. So typically, as it stands now, and it has standard for the last, I don't know, however many decades, there's pockets of West London, Southwest London that are very affluent, and typically affluence relates to money, and money can buy you all sorts of things. And I don't know what was first, whether it's chicken or the egg situation, but these people have what is considered to be a posh accent. People from Southeast London have a very different accent, and when you hear them talk, it's very clear that they are very likely to be from a certain neighborhood, and because they're from there, that implies certain things about their socioeconomic status and their class and so on. So I think that's not necessarily, I mean, I'm sure there's all over the world, there's places where within big cities the accents will change, but then how does that impact people's social climbing or their status socially? I don't know. But here, for sure, there's a thing that I call Accentism. And I don't know if that's a phrase that's already coined or not. I've never bothered to Google it, but it's, in my opinion, it's definitely a thing. And I have a different accent, and I get comments about my accent, but it's more that in fun, Australia and England have a very sort of brotherly relationship where the Australians are the younger brother, and they'll give us shit for our accent and so on. But if you're from England, your accent is a pretty good indicator of your place on the totem pole of status and hierarchy. So we got talking the other night about is it money? What's more important, money, race? And then I started talking about accent, saying that accent is probably more important than race in the social spectrum. So it's my belief, based on what I've seen in the country for the last 15 years, and I've brought this up with other people who agree. They tell me they agree. At the very top wealth level of the country, before you get there, everyone's sort of middling around, and people fall where their wealth, to their wealth level.
And so, okay, let me interject and give a little bit more backdrop. So it was fascinating to me, which is why I decided to record this conversation. Okay, Tim is a big blonde white guy with blue eyes, right? So in America, Tim is at the top of the food chain, all right? I mean, and he's straight. So he's a big, straight, cisgendered, blonde-haired, well, he's bald, but blue-eyed white guy with a beard, right? He would be at the top of the food chain where I'm from, right? But here, his accent sets him apart, right? He's good until he opens his mouth. And that was fascinating to me because I'm like, I've never heard of a situation where white people discriminated against the white people based on the way that they talk.
Yeah.
And you were telling me this story about like how you had been in like boardrooms or meetings or something.
Yeah.
And people didn't get hired because of...
So very controversial and very illegal, but we've been having, I've been around conversations where there's been a perfect person for the job, but their accent wouldn't represent the company well because they had a northern accent, and that's not the image that the company was trying to project, and the person didn't get the job.
And this is a room full of white men talking about it.
No, more diverse than that. But
really?
Yeah. And that was...
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This was a white person trying to get a job?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
A room full of ethnic upper class people and white folk decided to go against another white man, not get him the job.
I've had this conversation at least twice, and in both cases, one everyone was white, but there was a lesbian in the room, if that adds to the diversity.
Yeah. So.
But posh, super, like the poshest accent you could have.
Okay.
So she come from a very, very prestigious background. I don't know what it was. Okay. But you'd never know it to look at her until she opened her mouth. And then that gives it away. So you infer all these things. You say, oh, who's this like cool hipster lesbian girl with an undercut and a cool tattoo or whatever. But then she talks, and it's very clear she's gone to one of the best schools.
And what about the other situation?
And the other situation was ethnic, non-black, northern English, northern British people, me. And in both cases, they were discriminating against white females with northern accents. And now the job was to be face of the business in terms of hosting food and beverage and nightclub operations and marketing. So lots of dealing with PR, lots of face of the company to all the clients, to potential partners, collaborators, and this sort of thing. And in one case, the girl got the job essentially under duress, or for lack of a better word. They go, okay, we'll give her a try because there's look. So if we exactly exactly right. If there was two people there, one with the affluent posh West London accent, and one with her accent, the posh accent would have got it 1,000 times.
And so, just for context, this is a white woman and potentially white male candidates that did not, because of the way that they spoke.
Yeah.
And I was like, you have to understand that in America, whiteness is a class, in and of itself, that is separated from everything else.
Yeah.
So it don't matter if you sound like Billy Bob, or you sound like Joy Buttafuoco, or you sound like I don't know, Gordon Gekko. I mean, if you're a white guy and you're going for a job and I'm sitting there, even though I'm better qualified, unless that company is extremely progressive, you probably gonna get that job over me.
Yeah.
And this is not, and I can speak as well as anyone else. I physically might speak better than you, but it's the simple fact of the skin color dictates the position. And I was like, that is mind blowing to me that would happen this day and age. Like, that people here, the upper class or whatever else, still hold on to the way that white people essentially found a way to discriminate against other white people based on the way that they sound. I was like, I was mind blown about that. Because like I said, in America, whiteness assimilated everyone that had the quote unquote characteristics of white. So eventually, before it was the Irish before it was whomever, the British settlers came and, incorporated the country, and then they discriminated against, years go by, we discriminate against Irish people. And then Irish people eventually get accepted into whiteness. Then Germans eventually get accepted into whiteness. Then Polish, so on and so forth. The whiteness in America functions as a blanket for everybody that is of light, straight hair, lighter eye, whatever. And it acts as a glass ceiling that people that aren't white have a tendency, find it very hard to break. We usually have to build another building with our own ceiling and our own, on our own block to have or create the things that we are separated from and kept out of. So to hear this is like, whoa, like I was like, stop it. And to hear that an ethnic person or a person of color with a good accent could possibly get a job over a white person with a quote unquote bad 100%. Accent is absolutely fucking mind blowing.
Right,
because that's not how that works in my country.
Right. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about all the people that I know with, in air quotes, the best accent, the best British accent to have. Mm-hmm. And I know Indians with it, Arabs, half black, half Nigerian guy.
Half black, half Nigerian, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Anyway, several
people of color,
of diversity, whatever,
non-white people, with good accents.
And it's very clearly not some sort of mixed race person. Very clearly from a distinctly different ethnic group. Mm-hmm. They have, quote unquote, the right accent, and these people are they're very so. Again, it's the chicken and the egg thing. They are extremely articulate, but they're probably that way because they've been to the best schools, and they've been to the best schools because their parents have money,
right?
And that's probably what's led to the accent. So a lot of these schools are boarding schools, but they're micro environments, and so that's this accent will propagate there. So one of the guys in particular is an Arab guy, very clever kid, but probably one of the poshest accents I've ever heard. Now this guy, and his name is extremely Arabic. Mm-hmm. So if you saw him on paper, it might indicate certain things. Mm-hmm. But when you meet him, you're like, oh wow, this kid comes from the upper echelon of society. Mm. Now, whether he does or not, I don't know.
Right. But the accent infers that.
But his accent infers that.
And that's important.
And then over time you find out he went to this university and that school and lives in this suburb. And then the picture is very clear. Same with all of them. I think that getting that accent, whether it's something people think about or articulate out loud, I don't know if that's what they think of, but it certainly pays dividends in the future. So I told you about my old colleague.
How you wanted to move her son to a better neighborhood or something like that?
Because she wanted to, because she was worried that her son was growing up with the wrong accent, because he was growing up in Brixton, which is southeast London, which has a very distinct accent.
Side note, Brixton, southeast London, specifically Brixton, Peckham, that area over there, lots of black people, lots of African and Caribbean immigrants that came in. Either did something happen? Something needed to get rebuilt or something? Or something, I don't know.
I mean, those communities have been here forever, and they were building stuff. They were probably slaves at some point, and then free, but they've been separated from society. There was riots down in Brixton, famous Brixton riots.
Right.
But yeah, there's the demographics down there are diverse in that sense, and socioeconomically, it's relatively impoverished part of town.
Right.
But now, of course, it's being gentrified
not
heavily.
Anymore.
Yeah.
That's down there today. Not anymore.
Yeah, and that's a whole other problem that people really don't like down there. But the kids, people who live down there have got this really cool accent that's mixed of all the diverse heritage from all these Caribbean countries and so on. But it's also southeast London, which used to be white, and it's also poor. So it's got this old white working class, poor, southeast London accent. So several layers there already, and then it gets adapted by the various ethnic groups that have moved in.
Right.
So this little kid is 6 and he's white, and his parents are French and Eastern European.
White.
So as white as you get, really. And the kid is now sounding what you might expect a little poor black kid from the neighborhood to sound like.
Right.
Which is distinct.
Right.
And if you live here, over time, you will very, very clearly know it. You go that, you could bet that what part of town they're from.
Right.
Just a quick diversion. A friend of mine, he grew up on a council estate in North London, and if you heard him on the phone, you'd swear he was a black guy, because he has that like black council estate accent.
Right.
And then you meet him, and he's white as snow, and you're like, oh, well, that's not what I expected. Very, very odd.
Council estates, guys, are what we would call in the States the projects.
Yeah.
Difference being here is while areas are and can be sometimes predominantly one like ethnic group, London does a very good job of mixing everybody together. So as long as you poor, it don't matter whether you white, black, Spanish, Indian, whatever, you guys are all situated on one council estate. Everyone grows up together. And that is very different, of course, than America, because usually if you grow up in the projects, you're poor, it's because you're usually black or maybe brown. Maybe your family came from a Caribbean island somewhere, Puerto Rican, Dominican, whatever. So it's different here in that sense that everybody kind of grows. Everybody that's poor grows up together. Doesn't matter your skin color. You're usually together because you grew up on the same council estate.
Yeah. And but there is definitely that. It's definitely true. And there's also insulated communities where you might have. There's probably kids that grow up here speaking Nigerian, more like the accent, and Jamaican and Bangla and all this sort of stuff, until they get to school, and then it becomes this amalgamated accent. Anyway, so this girl has a kid. and she's scared that he's growing up with the wrong accent because she knows that won't serve him very well in the future. But, certain reasons she couldn't move out of the neighborhood, and I was sort of imploring her that if that was something that she was worried about, and I agreed with her that she wouldn't be giving him the best foot forward if he had the wrong accent in this city, country, that she should move to West London and get herself into a school district where the kid would be going to school with kids with better accents, because then his accent would become that accent.
Right.
And I had an example of that because I lived in a house with 2 children, one of whom went to a posh school in the West, and one of them went to the local school in Peckham. And the little girl who went to the school in Peckham honestly talked like a 15-year-old boy. She said, "Oh, come on, man." She'd say man and bruv and fam and all this crazy shit. And she was 4.
She was 4?
Because her parents did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she's 4.
Awesome.
So the 2 girls, one was 4 and one was 7.
Oh God.
And the 4-year, and because none of the parents spoke English because they were all immigrants from Brazil.
Right.
So they didn't know. And the kid was learning that English because that's the kids they were hanging out with, and because that was localized to the area. But the other girl, her mother worked at a school in West London, and as such got her kid into that school just by pure chance. And that little girl spoke like a little princess that you'd see on TV. "Mummy, I want to go get some ice cream." Super posh, right? And these 2 girls, and that was the the personification of this issue. And they're going to have very, very different experiences when they're going to get jobs out of uni. For sure. So they might grow up, let's pretend they're the same age. If they grow up and they both get a fantastic degree, and let's pretend that there's no sort of diversity quotas and all this sort of stuff, ultimately they'd be British girls for all intents and purposes, right? And actually, let's just say they're sort of, if they were both extremely high achievers, you could say that many companies would want to take them. But let's just say they're just normal, average people. If they're going for a job with any sort of, I can't even think of anything. I'm just sure you put those people both up for a job or some sort of other socially position with social standing, it's the girl with the good accent would get chosen over her cousin every single time. So,
and let me see, I'm trying to give you guys a contextualization for accents. So there's a movie that I love called Attack the Block. Have you ever seen that?
No.
You gotta watch that movie. The movie's awesome. But basically, aliens come and invade a council estate in South London. And so the guy, what's his name? John Boyega? That was one of his first movies. That was also one of his biggest movies. So this movie came out probably 8, 9, 10 years ago. I love that movie to death. But the director in it, because not all of the kids were from that area. All of the kids were from different areas of, can you take a picture?
No.
The kids were from different areas of London. And so to get a better, to get a more real sounding whatever, the director, I believe, is actually either from South London or grew up around that area or something like that. So he had all of the kids learn Southeast British slang, Southeast Londoner slang. And so it's whenever I started watching that and started kind of mimicking the accent or whatever, that's that South, that's the cool accent that you hear. Usually most people talk with that are grime rappers, or if you're from London and you do Afro beats or something like that, and you hear that kind of bruv, or man, or fam, all of that's usually from that area of town, and then for the posh accent, think Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. You know,
Yeah.
I'm told that's a pretty high up there accent. That's what he says. It's a pretty
The
posh
girl. The girl.
Yeah. And you know, Harry's middle of the road, and we all know Ron. Well, Ron was good. His family was good. He ain't shit. That accent was horrible. But like Harry is middle of the road, kind of good. Hermione's up there. That's posh, peak posh British, whatever. So that'll kind of give you a little bit more of a, I don't know.
Yeah.
A litmus test.
So two more examples about it is a friend of mine who's got the aristocratic posh accent. Mm-hmm. And he's a builder. And so
like Bob.
Like Bob, just like Bob. And when he goes to someone's house to fix whatever he's going to fix, usually the client is going to be expecting a particular accent, and it's definitely not his accent. They're expecting an Essex accent or a Cockney accent because that's really working class, and those people, those neighborhoods. And this is where the ridiculous thing, because it's bullshit. But
you can hold it on me.
Over time, people would expect that.
Wait.
Not really.
Okay, we'll continue. People would expect.
They would expect a very different accent to him, or a northerner, or something like this, because often, again, it's a stereotype, but people from these neighborhoods that lend to these accents are working class neighborhoods, which would lend themselves to jobs like builders. Mm. But he opens his mouth and he says, they're shocked, they say it. I weren't expecting you to sound like that. Because he sounds like Prince Harry.
Mm. Wait, was Prince Harry and
William?
Is that the one that married Meghan?
Yes, Harry's the Meghan.
Also, he still sounds all posh.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those two.
Well, I mean, I guess you can't help it.
Yeah, because they went to
given the pedigree.
They went to the best school in England. Yeah. Okay. And all the boys that go to that school are going to sound the same, and you can hear them, and when you hear them you're like, oh, wow, this guy's probably got very wealthy parents, and he's probably very well connected, and often it's not a surprise they end up in specific jobs like finance and private equity and property and all this sort of stuff. And the cycle continues. But we discussed the other day, like when people make it up to the top and they've got lots of money, then the accentism comes into it again. Okay. So accentism might fuck up people's chances for a job, or people might look down on you because you have the wrong accent, so whatever. But you make it up, you do everything right, you get there, you've got $100 million every week, you're great. But you will still be discriminated against in some maybe very obscure and small way, because you have a Cockney accent, let's say.
That's a horrible way to sound. I'm sorry. Like,
I
agree with you. That's a horrible way to sound.
And the example about this is the rapper Professor Green, who talks about it. And he says that he'd made it to the top, relatively wealthy and leader in his field and so on.
White guy.
White rapper from a council estate in Clapton, which is like East London, Northeast London, absolute dump. Again, it's a place that's becoming gentrified, but it was probably a very horrible place when he was growing up there.
So I know a lot of my favorite places in London are either south or east. So,
now it's
you can take. I'm talking about before that happened.
Yeah, before I'm sure it was
you can
pretty.
Take the boy out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the boy.
Characterful. And he said he got up there, and then he realized that he was being discriminated against. He's like, wait, I got to the top of the pile. I'm a self-made man, but I'm discriminated against because he's got an East London council estate poor accent. So he's wealthy now, but he's still being discriminated against. And he married a West London posh girl, or some sort of posh girl. And they divorced, presumably for many reasons. But one of the things was, he said they couldn't bridge the divide between the classes. He came from not working class, but council estate poor. And she came from relative affluence, or not relative affluence, affluence. So that led us to the topic of, if there'd be, so in that stratosphere of wealth, you could be black or Arab or whatever, but if your accent is posh, he's getting treated better than the white Professor Green rapper, wealthy guy.
Which is my book.
Which blew your mind.
Because I don't understand. I just don't.
No, so we went down the path. So you have a kid, and that kid is obviously black. Let's say he's fully black. You've become very wealthy in the meantime. You send your kid to one of these top schools. Your kid will have the posh accent. And then by definition, people will understand that this kid comes from the right class, or the top class, because of his accent. And then he will get treated in a different way than you with a different accent, or a rich white person that's come from a place that has a different accent, where that accent implies poverty, lack of class, and all the things that are tied in with that, which are bullshit.
Like a Welsh accent or a Scottish accent or an Irish accent.
Yep.
You can be rich and Irish and rich and Scottish and go to good schools in both of those countries, but it's not a rich British white accent. Well, excuse me, a rich, posh, upper class British accent. So you're always going to be looked at as, cool, but...
Yeah, and you can hear people put the accent on. That's how important it is. You hear, and you can hear when people are faking it. I had a meeting the other day, and the guy was faking the accent. It was clear.
So at what point you get called out? Like, do people call people out for using fake accents?
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm sure that's a bit more of a thing. I'm sure that amongst themselves, the English, and I'm not privy to this because I'm not English, truly, so if they hear one of their own trying to lose their accent and trying to sound more posh than they are, then that is probably grounds for social ridicule.
Like I said, all this is like very fascinating because I don't, it's like when you hear stories, I mean, there are, this happens in America, but not in that way. Like, it's not like, I mean, if your white rich daughter marries a middle to lower class white guy that has his shit together, the family's okay. You know, there's not going to be like some weird, strange divide because he sounds away. Like, you know, on paper, he's good. He treats her good. I might not like particularly where you come from, but I mean, that doesn't matter because you're here now. You're with the upper class. And like I said, I try to explain to people, I was like, okay, so like, especially like black people in the States, like when people ask me about London and, you know, like racism and stuff, and I said, there is always going to be a bias against people of color versus people that don't have color. You know, it's always going to be like the darker you are, usually the more unfair, unjust treatment you receive, so on and so forth. But here specifically in this city, in this country, classism is a whole other more prevalent ball game than what you look like. Like what you look like is just a kind of like stepping stone. Like it's, what do you sound like? Where do you live? What's your lineage? Where'd your parents come? Like it literally, like those things, the right accent, money can kind of overshadow you being pitch black. Yeah. And you know what? Because it's like, oh, well, shit, because it's almost like the way that you talk is your skin color. Yeah. In American terms. Yeah. Like, you know, a posh accent is white skin. And, you know, a not so posh accent, okay, now we're starting to get into those color grades, you know? And I was like, and I try to understand that, I try to explain it to people. And it's hard for somebody that grew up in the States to conceptualize it because it's something that you have to kind of experience to kind of, and have experience with. There's nothing that, I'm just not coming to this revelation, and this is many trips to London, many British movies watched, whatever else. Like, you know, I'm a person that I know a little bit about the culture, but this was new to me because it's just like, I don't physically, I mean, I understand it, but it's hard for me to even kind of put into working whatever, because America.
Yeah, another two examples I've seen several doctors actually, who are of South Asian descent, so Indian, Bangla, something like around this region. And I've had one of the guys, he has the East London Bangla accent.
Okay.
Now, which is typically, it sounds a bit poorer, a bit more poor. And when he opened his mouth the first time I started talking, I was surprised. Oh, turns out he's born and bred in the area. Okay, he might have been a local boy, done good sort of thing. And I've seen another doctor, same like him, but when he opened his mouth, the Queen's English started coming out of it. Extremely posh. And that's what I expected.
From a doctor.
Right,
you expect the Queen.
Doesn't matter what they look like. Doctor could be as black as night, but I would probably expect him to talk the Queen's English. So I think that's coming at it from a reverse angle as well. Doesn't matter what they look like.
It's what he sounds.
It's what he sounds like, and then you're like, that makes perfect sense. So if I met, some posh financier kind of guy, doesn't matter whether he's Chinese or purple, I'd probably expect him to have quite a posh accent, let's say, or a doctor or a plastic surgeon or something like this. I wouldn't expect them to talk like they've come from a council estate. But of course, anyone from a council estate or any part of London or any part of the world for that matter can be anything. They could be the best mathematician. They can be the plastic surgeon or the financier or the or whoever. But this is what this British accentism, classism thing is. And the class doesn't matter because it doesn't matter, or rather the race doesn't matter. That's sort of a non-issue. Then you get to the accentism, and that will tell you what their class is. And then their class often correlates with their profession, with their social standing, and their social group, and all the rest of it.
But just not with the color, is
irrelevant,
mind fucking boggling to me. Like it's just like I was like, Kanye needs to hear this because Kanye wants very bad not to be black anymore. And I'm just like, Kanye needs to come here, take some boarding school classes. He'd be all right.
Yeah. So my Nigerian friend with the posh, fancy accent, he would be in higher standing to any of the white people with a lesser, in quotes, accent, for sure. He would be if with his accent in a room of 100 people, he, in theory, would be the person with the highest status because of his accent. That's it.
It's just fucking mine. I want to see it to believe. It's funny.
And by the way, he could be a student, let's say, still hasn't done anything, but because of his accent, that implies so much that he will, with silly examples not being included, like some wealthy guy who's come off a council estate or whatever. But generally speaking, he will be assumed to have higher class than anyone in the place. If he's got the accent and nobody else has it, it will be assumed, because that, I guess, goes back to all sorts of things that I don't really know about. Maybe the aristocracy and the sort of insular nature of the wealth and so on in this country, and the class system, and how you're probably not getting out of, up until very recently, if you were born in a certain neighborhood, you probably weren't going to leave it, and certain neighborhoods were based around certain professions or industrial or factory or extremely poor market people, whatever it might be. Now it's a bit more accessible for everyone, but still those old school things remain for sure.
And I just, again, America runs deep. The only country I've ever lived in. So it's like, you know, the norms, man. Like it's funny because I asked my buddy Noel about this, and he was like, he had a different take, but he kind of agreed with you. He said, no matter your accent, you are going to be what you are. So it doesn't matter if the poshest accent, if you're a black woman, you're always going to be a black woman. But it's just something that I guess is, how do you explain it? It's like an outlier to you. It makes it easier for you to move about in certain social circles and social standings because of the way that you sound. But you're always going to be the exception to the rule. You know, you're always going to be black man, black woman, Asian man, Asian woman. You're always going to stand out, but it just makes it, I guess, more easy and palatable for you to exist inside of those spaces. And I was like, that sounds a little bit more like America in terms of, you know, what money does for you. Money gets you into spaces that you wouldn't have normally been in, regardless of whatever is. But the example I gave to you is no matter how much money Jay-Z makes, he is still a nigga in a coupe. All right, he's still gonna be a nigga driving a Bentley. Now, does he have money? Yes. Does he even have social status now? Of course. Like, you know, or a better example, Barack Obama was the president of the United fucking States. And he was still called a nigger. People still made fun of him and his wife.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Right.
Surely Obama is considered to be as aristocratic as it gets in the US.
He's still a nigger. Yeah. He's still a nigger. It's like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't, like, people in the Senate, some quit, some were reprimanded for sending emails out about him, for posting pictures of him eating watermelon, so on and so forth. Like, it is that deep. You cannot escape. That is America. Like, and so it's fascinating to me that a black man in the highest mental that country, my country, can have is still treated like he belongs at the bottom. Because
from the outside looking in, I would say that Obama is like at the cream of the crop of the US society. He like revered.
I mean,
I mean, like within the context of what we're talking about.
Right, really, yeah. Oh, absolutely fucking not. Because the fucking poorest, dirt poor redneck in the state of bumfuck West Georgia, Mississippi, Atlanta, Texas is still gonna have more social standing. It's still gonna have the ability to be like, he's a nigger, I don't trust him. Oh, that nigger did this. That nigger fucked up our country. Like, and it's just, like I said, it's just amazing, like, you know, how this works.
But in that upper stratosphere, where America's got lots of powerful, wealthy people. I'm assuming most of them are white men.
Yes, large portion.
In that rarefied air, is Obama at the bottom of that pile, or is he? No,
he's still at the bottom of that pile.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's president, so maybe in the middle.
Yeah.
Maybe in the middle. But again, the black guy, the really black guy, like father was Kenyan black guy. Like, again, Trump had a birtherism thing where he called for the president of the United States' birth certificate. It was backed up by the Republican Party and country bumfuck. I need you to put this in relationship. So when you explain these things about accent, I'm like, wait, what? That breaks through color? I'm American. Nothing breaks through color.
Yeah. So, okay.
Nothing breaks through color.
So listen to all the prime ministers talk in Britain. They've all got the same accent. Why is that? They've all... And that's a whole other thing about cronyism and this
Even the mayor of London,
Sadiq
Khan, he talks very
I
brown guy.
Yeah, so I don't know what his voice is, but there's a good chance he's got a posh accent.
He's got a very posh accent.
Again, same thing. You listen to Boris Johnson, extremely posh. Listen to the guy that he replaced, David Cameron. He replaced Theresa May, but David Cameron, extremely posh. All of them, doesn't matter what side, Democrat, Republican, or our version of that, you know. These, like, I think more than 20 prime ministers have come from Eton, this school that Harry and William went to. That's why they all sound the same, and they're all, and then often they go to the best universities. They go to Cambridge and Oxford, and it continues. And then they come into the city and they do all these jobs, which is in stark contrast to Australia, right? Because everyone sounds the same, and that would be unacceptable. And the richest man in Australia sounds like he stepped off a farm. And I mean, our culture doesn't align with that. Like, you're not allowed to sit in the back seat of a taxi because it's culturally inappropriate. You need to sit in the front with the driver.
Really?
Because you're not better than him. You're not a fucking king.
Wow.
I forgot, because you sit in taxis at the back here.
Yeah.
And the States.
Yeah.
And I got into a taxi when I was in Australia, and my friend went, "Oh, aren't we posh?" You know, or the Australian version of that. And I was like, I completely forgot.
Big British guy. Oh, you're British.
You're Mr. London now. Yeah.
Oh, you sit in the back of cat. Oh,
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you can't differentiate people from their accent in Australia. So everyone, there's a mild and there's a very mild and there's a relatively strong Australian accent, but the prime ministers won't sound always like the really, really posh ones. They'll be articulate,
right,
of course, but no discernible difference for the most part. Whereas here, like, very clear. You've never had someone with a Southeast London accent as the prime minister. I don't know if you've ever had someone with a Northern accent as a prime minister. Not in my lifetime. Margaret Thatcher, Blair, you know, all these, and the recent ones I just mentioned, they're Gordon Brown, they all got a posh accent. Why is that? Why isn't someone from Liverpool up there? Why isn't someone from Southeast London?
That's crazy. I mean, and conversely speaking, I mean, like, the way that you talk in America is a signifier of class, but it's unimportant. Like, I am poor, or I grew up poor, and I'm black, but I was complimented often by, I remember it distinctly, I had to be like 6 or 7, and me and my mom were going to see some apartment, and I was speaking, and I remember this white guy gave me $20 because he was like, "Oh my God, he sounds so articulate," blah, blah, blah. Like, "Oh God, the little black boy sounds like
a little black boy with a dictionary."
Yeah. I mean, like, my mom was my mother, my aunt, my grandmother were very specific in the way we spoke.
So maybe that's a version of...
And it's like, you know, my mom made sure I read the dictionary. My mom made sure I read the books. My mom made sure, like, I was not allowed to use slang for quite some time. Until it was unavoidable. Like, until I really couldn't, you know, my mother would correct me. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's like, but that doesn't mean anything. It helps. You know, like, she named me the way that she named me, Justin Carrington Smith. She says, because, for a fact, I didn't want anyone to know what color you were when you went for a job interview until you walked through the door.
Well, you know, she's very, very, very ahead of her time, because they've done studies on that now. And they've tested names like Juan Rodriguez Dominguez, and they've tested, like, Nigerian names like Ongawungi Number Wimbe or something like this. And they've tested John Smith. And then they've also tested something like Justin Carrington Smith, a hyphenated surname. Which is a very posh thing over here. Hyphenated surnames is a thing.
Oh, well, that's my middle name. Is that what y'all call them over here?
No. So, for example, I got friends with, you know, their names when put together. So they got married and they put both of their names together and then hyphenate it, and then it implies a certain social standing. So because when aristocratic families got together, they wouldn't want to lose a name, so they put these two families together, and then it's boom, boom, and so that indicates a lot. So actually, if you put a dash, if you put a hyphen between your name and you're applying for jobs here, they wouldn't be expecting to see you walk through the door.
Really?
No, especially with Carrington, it's super posh.
My mother watched Dynasty, and it was a rich white oil tycoon family.
So funny.
And that's where she got the name with the Carringtons. And so that's what my mom was like.
Really?
My mom was literally like,
that's
okay,
funny.
I'm naming you that because it has a ring to it. It sounds strong.
If she doesn't already know, that they've tested this at, with sample sizes that lead it to be perceived to be accurate. If you've got a name that's perceived to be ethnic on a CV, I mean, they're saying that your chance of getting through, I don't know how the hell they tested this and quantified it, I don't know, but it was clear. It was clear. If you have a white British sounding name, you're going to go further in an interview process, in a vacuum than you would with a Nigerian name or a Spanish sounding name.
So my name with a posh accent, I can get pretty far.
Oh my God. Prime Minister.
Shit.
First American Prime Minister.
But
seriously.
That was it's just like I said, it's just interesting. Okay, so story time on my end. I was in Mexico, I think. Maybe. I was somewhere. I don't remember. And I was at a hostel. And there was a girl, she was a white girl, white American. America's like hard on for race is like nothing else in any developed country I've ever seen. And I've only experienced this because I've been in so many places. When one says nationality in America, it's a fancy word for race. So basically, where you black, you're African American, you're Latino, Hispanic, you're Caucasian, Asian, other, But when you go other places, nationality literally means the nation that you come from. So American, English, African, or Nigerian, or whatever. It literally means the nation that you come from. So this white girl was trying to fill out the form to go into the hostel. And she's like, it says nationality and I can't find my race. And it was like, but they want to know where you're from, not what color you are. No, that's not right. Nationality means race. I'm trying to find Caucasian. I can't find white. Like she literally couldn't grasp the concept. This poor white girl that had probably never been anywhere in her entire life, obviously. She couldn't grasp the concept that nationality meant where you're from, not what you look like. Literally, the nation that you are from. The nation that you are from is the United States of America. You are American, so that's what you check. Caucasian, Asian, the shit don't fucking matter. It's irrelevant.
So from my perspective, I've seen that we get that in Australia sometimes in certain government forms and so on. They want to know if you're Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or Caucasian or Asian or whatever. And that's always fucked me off, that question. I'm like, I don't know how the fuck this is relevant to me getting a driver's license. And so, I'll write NA because how the fuck is that relevant? Or ever since I was a kid seeing that, like it's not quite as common as I know it is. I've filled in job applications and in American sites, I was like, what the fuck? They really get granular with it, and it's bullshit. But I understand where there's context where that matters, like medical, for example. But I don't see how it's relevant in most contexts where I've ever seen it. So why the fuck are they asking you? So if me and you go and filling out forms for like, I don't know, a loan or like checking into a hostel, who gives a fuck? What's it got to do with anything?
It doesn't matter, but except for my country.
So strange.
But it's like
it should be illegal.
I was getting to that too. Like in France, they actually have done away with, and there was controversy over this because the people of color feel like they basically kind of did it to where, like saying what ethnic group you are or whatever, or putting that on paperwork is illegal. And people feel like, the people of color feel like, hey, you're erasing us. And I'm like, that, I understand what you're trying to say in a perceived homogenous society like France, where French girls are blonde hair and blue eyed or brunette, and I understand how you can get that, but as a person coming from America and seeing the harm that can come from that, I would rather have it the French way than the American way. Yeah. And it's just a different point of view and perspective based on lived life experiences. But like, I'm like,
I would see it like as, I mean, I think I understand their perspective. I don't think I do though as well at the same time. But if there's no box to tick, isn't that a good thing? Because it's like,
then
it's irrelevant.
You're all one French people.
Yeah,
it's because you're born in France. Okay, you be black and French. You can be white and French. You can be Spanish and French. Like it doesn't, it literally. You were born in France, so you're French.
Yeah,
you're French first, and everything else second. And I can kind of understand. How that could be an issue. I get it, but it's like coming from a country where, unless you're white, you're everything else first and American second. I understand that. I understand. I can see both sides of it, but I'm like, I mean, but you still have your culture, you still have your heritage, but you're French. Yeah. You were born in France.
Yeah.
You didn't grow up inside of your house. You might have grown up a certain culture and all. You might have grown up Sierra Leonean in your house. You might have grown up with those cultural things, but you live in France. You are French. If you were to move to Sierra Leone, you're going to be like a fish out of water because you don't know. You speak the language, but you don't know the customs. You don't know the area. You don't know the people.
Well, that's what they have. The problem here is like all the Indian and Pakistani kids and so on. Mm-hmm. They apparently they don't feel like they're part of British society. Mm-hmm. Because they have a completely different culture and all the rest of it. But then when they do like a trip to the motherland,
you're not Indian.
They're definitely not from there either. So they're stuck in this weird purgatory, and then it's they have to find an identity within that.
Right. And there's a word for that too. It's called third culture.
Third culture.
Yeah, there's a word for that because a lot of I read about it, and there's a Swedish singer. I can't think of her name, Sherry, and she was talking about how like her parents are from like Eritrea or some Eastern African country, but she was born in Sweden.
Right.
But you realize, hey, I'm not a Swedish blonde hair, blue eyed white guy, and I'm definitely not that either. So it's a third culture.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the thing I was trying to explain to you, what W.E.B. Du Bois said when he was like, the double consciousness of being a Black American. Inside of America, because America is our home. That's where I was born and bred. That's where a large portion of my family were forcibly immigrated to, but that is by far, and it's actually interesting because there's been studies done. There were Black people there before many of the European settlers because of being Black in London or whatever, or other European countries being sent, well, mainly Britain, and being sent to the penal colony of America. You were there before everybody else got there, before the Mayflower, all that stupid shit. So there are Black people whose lineage traced back before then, but that country, our country, my country, still doesn't accept us and treats us as second citizens, which is why you have the president of the United States being called a nigger, a coon, or whatever else by his subordinates, essentially. Yeah. And his subordinates feel comfortable doing that. And so it's like, that is the double consciousness thing. So I understand, how a British Indian kid could be like, well, I'm Indian in the house and I'm British outside, but not really either. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, so I totally get it. It's double consciousness. It's one of those, well, in his case, In their case, it's a third consciousness. For us, it's a double consciousness. Because we don't have, most African Americans don't have ties to the mother country, the continent of origin, you know?
Yeah.
Most of us don't.
Yeah.
Unless you are a African or Caribbean and you have ties to that country.
Yeah.
Then you could say third culture as well. Like a Jamaican, first generation Jamaican American is going to grow up American. Yeah. Obviously. But that household is Jamaican.
Yeah.
You know?
Same like here, but they're not, I don't think they'd suffer from that, maybe, or they'd suffer from it less, that the third culture thing, because whatever other issues there are, I'm sure there are, but
kind of third culture, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because Black American and Black Caribbean is different. So now we're dealing with your Caribbean family, and you're dealing with America. So now America has you on two levels. You are American, but you're Black. So you're dealing with Caucasian America, and then you're dealing with Black America, and you're realizing that there's going to be a disconnect between Black Americans and Caribbean Americans. So it is still kind of like a third culture, but less intense and severe as it would be here, where you're a clear distinction difference of, hey, I am Indian and I am British, but when I don't necessarily feel at home in this country, and I damn sure don't feel at home in India, I don't know what's going on over here. So it's a little different.
That's the thing. I think they did a documentary on it, like a show on one of the trashier channels, and they got these kids who are 21 or something, and they took them to India, and India's mental. You know, India's like cars or scooters going in every direction, and just street food traders everywhere. It's crazy. It's pure chaos, that place. And they're like, whoa, I definitely don't
fit in.
Don't fit in, don't understand this.
Right now.
You know? Right. But I've grown up with certain aspects of this.
Yeah, but most of it, the whole thing is just like, you know, I've had a couple slices of the pizza, but this whole, whoa, wait a minute, this is a different, what is this? I said no cheese. This is cheese. This is, I said no pepperoni. I got pepperoni on this.
They got pepperoni cheese pizza in India?
Yeah. Dude?
Yeah. If Indians did pizza, it would be legit.
I don't know if I do it.
Man, the bread they do.
Oh, a naan?
The naan that they stick on the side of the tandoor. That shit is amazing. So if you put a bit of cheese and a bit of tomato and that, a bit of pepperoni. Oh, shit.
This is a good segue. We're both larger men. So. Hunger is real. But
the hunger is real.
Hunger is all-encompassing thing. But yeah, so I guess we can break close to it. But yeah, this was really. Oh yeah, we're at an hour and 19 minutes.
Well, I hope that was explained. You know, well enough so people can understand it.
I think it is, and I think it's a very. It'll be one of those things that people. It's a surprise, especially to those of us Americans that ain't white. It'll be like, wait, what? I can come to London and get a good accent and do good? Wait a minute.
Yeah. And it's... well, okay, so just quickly on that. If you come in with an American accent, I
asked my friend this too. I was
you don't have to deal with all that sort of stuff. It's sort of irrelevant to you because you're coming in as an American.
Right.
And all that bullshit that goes on in America, we know of, but... all that nuance we don't know. Like all this stuff you're telling me, I understand there's a black-white divide and all that, you know, and all the fucking horrible shit that goes along with it. But you come over here and you dress in a suit and tie and you hobnob with those people, you're just a well-to-do American because you're dressed in a suit and tie and you're hobnobbing with these people. They don't know anything about that. Right. So, and then you don't get drawn into that stuff that all the English people here will be drawn into, the nuance here. So there's nuance in both places. And to be fair, that might happen over there. You go over there with a Cockney accent and they think you're British and they think you're
like, you're so fucking cool.
Live at Buckingham Palace.
Well, no. Say banana. I did that to my friend. Say banana. What do you mean? Like banana? No, say it the way you normally say it. I'm like, banana? Yes! Give me banana. I want the banana. You want it, Tati? So it's just because I asked him, I said, okay, with my American accent, I know you guys only know 3, down south, New York, and out west.
and
so
even West is like the generic sort of non-accent.
So it's like, how do I sound? It's like
You sound
really
like
doesn't
you
matter.
sound like just. It doesn't go anyway. It's like generic almost. Maybe no, I don't know enough about the accent, but I can tell, like you say, a Boston and a New York and a down south, but I probably couldn't tell you where. There's a southern accent,
Right.
and there's some other weird accents like. Oh, I remember that's Canada. There's some weird accent. What's that movie Fargo? Where's that set?
Oh, North Dakota.
North Dakota. They got a funny accent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like a
they
country.
talk really weird.
Yeah.
They sound really weird. I know a couple.
But I couldn't tell you where that's from, but I know it's a distinct American accent.
Right. Oh, wow, that is really weird. So it's this, and I was asking, I was like, so what is I was like, what does it give you? I was like, I mean, I guess New York is like loud and boisterous, and the South is like friendly and or dumb, and then California's like, I like this.
Yeah.
And I like LA, like maybe also dumb, but like, where does my accent fall? And he's like, well, you don't really have one.
No.
He was like, you just kind of sound like regular. And I know you said, because we had this conversation, I was like, well, I just kind of pick up the region where I am.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, because you said elephant castle one day, and then you went back into your regular American accent. And I was like, but it doesn't sound right saying elephant and castle.
Yeah.
Like, everybody says elephant and castle, or castle elephant, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I just naturally said, oh yeah, no, I'm saying the elephant castle, but like, and I just go in it up because
Yeah.
it just doesn't sound right to
Yeah.
me saying elephant and castle. Like, elephant castle, like, it just sounds odd.
Yeah, and I bet there's reverse examples of that that I can't think of off the top of my head, but for sure.
I'm
It
just
sound
gonna,
ridiculous
I'm gonna
if I
fall
said that.
into the way that it was said to
That's
me.
smart.
Yeah,
This makes sense.
So I was like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know. And it's just funny to hear you say that, because we were talking about it on the bus, and I was explaining regional, accents. And I was like, DC people have a certain way of speaking, like where a South London and British boy might say bruv, a man, or fam. They see him doing it now.
Yeah.
But, we might say mo or jai, and, it's like, nah, everybody over there, nah, they straight, fam. They straight mo, they straight mo. Like, like, that is my natural hometown accent, but like, I don't speak in there all the time. I had no reason to, unless I'm around family or friends and talk like this. I want to be understood.
Yeah.
So, this is my normal disposition and way of talking.
Yeah, and for that matter, when I'm talking to my scallywag mates in the suburbs of Perth or wherever, we're talking in a way that's fairly, inaudible to a lot of people as well. I mean, you can understand it probably, but there's a bunch of slang.
What's going on? What that mean? What'd you say?
I've seen Australian shows with subtitles on in them when I've been in the States.
Y'all do sound kind of
Just
funny. Y'all have a
hysterical.
very interesting way of speaking. Like, very interesting.
Really?
Talking.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear it sometimes from really strong. Sometimes I can't hear it at all because it sort of blends into nothing. Sometimes I'm talking to Australian, I think they're New Zealand, and that obviously never happened. A lot of people confuse me. They don't know where I'm from.
You have a South African accent.
Yeah, South African.
After being here for so long, it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
I get that all the time. South African or Kiwi.
Yeah.
I get, like, if someone's got a really good ear, they'll think I'm a Kiwi, and they're wrong. Not often people get me Australian. They do, it happens, but I get South African and Kiwi more than Australian.
I wonder what British people think of South Africans. South African.
The accent?
Yeah.
I
Is it
don't
like
know.
you? Yeah. I wonder if it's like you. Like, you.
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I think the Australian accent is probably thought of. I know it for sure because I've been on the receiving end of it. They think you're stupid and they make jokes about silly things, sheep shagging and convict and all this sort of stuff.
Shag means fuck.
Yeah.
Shag means fuck.
But it's not. I think I am probably being discriminated against at some weird level, but it's not enough to hold me back. But people might think when I'm talking, I sound like a fucking idiot. Like, that might be a thing. I don't care. But I could see why, because when I hear someone who's got a thick, unadulterated accent fresh off the plane from Australia, I'm like, ooh, wow.
You in for it?
And I think, that's a bit trashy. This sounds a bit
really?
thick. Yeah.
God, you've become.
I'm an accentist.
Yeah, you've become a legend for real.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're wrapping this up because I'm hungry.
Pizza.
So, I want pizza. There's a really good
halloumi pizza.
I'm sick of halloumi. Well, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not sick of halloumi.
silly boy.
I'm not sick of halloumi. I want pizza now because we talked about it. So yeah. All right, good man.
All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Pleasure.
We'll wrap this up. Thank you. Tune in next time.
OVT.
I don't know when the next time is going to be, but yeah. It's OVT Network. Bye bye.